H. Holmes, the doctor who built a hotel designed to kill. He built a hotel with soundproofed rooms, hidden gas lines piped directly to the beds, and a basement equipped with a dissection table and a kiln large enough to destroy a body. Guests checked in during one of the largest World's Fairs in American history. Many of them never checked out, and for years nobody noticed they were gone. Herman Webster Mudgett, who had become known to history under the alias Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, arrived in Chicago in the late 1880s, having already established a pattern of insurance fraud and petty criminal schemes under multiple false identities in previous years. Holmes was, by every contemporary account, genuinely charming, intelligent, and capable of presenting himself as a respectable, successful physician and businessman, qualities that allowed him to build genuine trust and credibility within his community. Credibility he would systematically exploit for years before anyone recognized the true scope of what he was actually doing. In 1893, Chicago hosted the World's Columbian Exposition, a massive World's Fair that drew an estimated 27 million visitors to the city over the course of the event, transforming Chicago temporarily into one of the most heavily trafficked cities on Earth, filled with visitors from across the country and around the world, many traveling alone, unfamiliar with the city, and without established local connections who might notice or report their disappearance. Holmes, who had spent the preceding years constructing an enormous, elaborate building near the fairgrounds that would later become known in press coverage as the Murder Castle, a 100-room structure he had built specifically and deliberately, using a rotating series of different construction crews, each hired for only brief periods and never shown the building's complete architectural plans, ensuring no single worker or contractor understood the full scope or purpose of what they were actually helping to construct. The building, publicly operated as a hotel and rooming house, catering to the massive influx of fair visitors, contained numerous features investigators would later determine served no legitimate architectural purpose beyond facilitating murder. Windowless rooms that could be sealed and filled with gas piped in from a control panel in Holmes's private office, structural chutes connecting upper floors directly to the basement, a specially reinforced vault-like room, and a basement containing a dissection table, various acid vats, and a large kiln. Equipment investigators concluded had been specifically installed to allow Holmes to methodically dispose of victims' remains, in some cases by dissecting bodies and selling skeletons and anatomical specimens to medical schools. A genuinely functioning, profitable secondary criminal enterprise Holmes operated alongside his murders. Holmes's victims included hotel guests, employees, and, in several documented cases, women with whom he had formed romantic or business relationships, luring them with promises of marriage, employment, or business partnership before murdering them, frequently after first convincing them to take out life insurance policies naming Holmes or his associates as beneficiaries, transforming his killings into a genuinely profitable criminal enterprise rather than murder motivated purely by whatever psychological drives underlay his broader pattern of violence. Holmes's downfall came not through investigation of the disappearances directly, since Chicago's transient fair-era population and the sheer scale of visitors passing through the city made individual disappearances remarkably easy to overlook for an extended period, but through an unrelated insurance fraud scheme involving a former associate, Benjamin Petezel, whom Holmes murdered in 1894 as part of a staged death insurance scam that went wrong, leading investigators to Holmes through the resulting fraud investigation rather than any direct suspicion about the hotel itself. Once investigators began examining Holmes's broader activities and eventually searched the hotel building directly, they discovered the building's true nature and the disappearances of numerous former guests, employees, and associates over the preceding years began to form a genuinely coherent, horrifying pattern. Holmes was ultimately convicted specifically for Petezel's murder, and during his imprisonment and subsequent trial, confessed to killing 27 people total, though investigators and later historians have generally treated this confession with significant skepticism, since Holmes had a well-documented history of fabrication and manipulation throughout his life, and several of the specific murders he confessed to involved individuals later found to be alive, suggesting his confession may have been partly motivated by a desire to sell his story to newspapers for money rather than representing a fully accurate accounting. Modern historians and investigators working from confirmed disappearances, physical evidence, and documented financial fraud connected to specific victims generally estimate Holmes's actual confirmed victim count somewhere between 9 and the mid-20s, acknowledging that the true number, given the sheer scale of Chicago's transient fare population and the limitations of contemporary investigative techniques, may never be definitively established with full certainty. Holmes was executed by hanging in May of 1896, reportedly requesting his own body be encased in concrete before burial specifically to prevent grave robbers from exhuming and dissecting his remains, a request granted by authorities resulting in Holmes's own burial in a coffin filled with cement. A genuinely striking final irony, given how extensively he had personally profited from dissecting and selling the remains of his own victims throughout his criminal career. What makes H. Holmes's case endure as one of history's most significant early serial murder investigations isn't simply the scale or method of his killings. Genuinely disturbing as the specific mechanics of the murder castle remain even by modern standards, but the specific historical context that allowed his crimes to continue undetected for years. A massive temporary influx of anonymous visitors to an unfamiliar city, combined with contemporary law enforcement's limited investigative capacity to track individual disappearances across a rapidly growing, transient urban population, conditions that created a genuinely unique historical opportunity for exactly the kind of systematic, profit-motivated predation Holmes had specifically designed his entire building and business operation to exploit. The murder castle itself was destroyed by fire under circumstances that were never fully investigated or resolved just 2 years after Holmes's arrest in 1895, eliminating most of the direct physical evidence of the building's true construction and purpose before it could be fully documented, meaning much of what modern historians understand about the building's specific internal features relies on contemporary newspaper accounts and investigator testimony, rather than surviving physical evidence, adding yet another layer of unresolved uncertainty to a case that, over a century later, still resists a fully definitive, universally agreed upon accounting of exactly how many people Holmes actually killed within the walls of a building specifically designed to make sure nobody would ever find out. If stories like this, where history's earliest documented serial killers exploited chaos and anonymity most people never think to fear, are exactly what you come here for, subscribe to The Grave Details, because history holds more stories like this than most people will ever know.